Hi guys, welcome. Today I'm talking about phosphate. So quite often overlooked phosphates. I'm myself guilty of not paying too much attention to it over the years, if I'm honest. It's one of those parameters that I always tend to lump together with nitrate. I kind of say nitrates and phosphates purely because they both have the same kind of negative impact on your pond, which is green water and blanket weed. As you'll see behind me, I've got blanket weed on the walls of this pond, and I have had pretty much since it started up in June. I'm still just trying to ride it out. The reason it's come to my attention of late though is because I've now got this system where exactly where everything where I want it to be. So all my parameters are on the targets that I set for them. So I'll just pop them up on the screen there now. This is what I'm at as of right now, and this is pretty much bomb proof, to be honest. On the weekends when my wife and I are off work and we're around in the garden, it's a nice day, between us we might throw 10 or 12 handfuls of food in there. They eat it and I never see a spike, and then during the week they may only get 3 or 4. Never an issue. So the system is now fully up and running, as I say, bomb proof really. All the parameters are absolutely where I want them to be, and you'll notice my nitrate is 0. So since I added the homemade shower there, which I'm constructed as part of a video series on the channel, which you can check out if you've not seen those, worth a watch. Since I added the shower, nitrates come down to 0, but obviously, as you can see, I still have the blanket weed problem, and this has kind of caused me to look at other parameters that are kind of less frequently checked, I guess, because all the others are so good. And I looked at my phosphate, and what I found was my phosphate in this pond is at 2 milligrams per litre, which is massively high. It really is high, and obviously this is the reason for the blanket weed. Now, phosphate, where it comes from, 3 kind of main mechanisms for it finding its way into your pond. The first one is runoff. So if you have a ground level pond, if you have lawns, paths, patio, anything like that where rainwater can run across and into your pond, you'll get phosphates in that way. Phosphate is essentially the same stuff that's used for plant foods and fertilizers, so you can see why it makes the weed in the pond grow. So if you have feed on your lawn, stuff like that in the soil that can run into the pond water, that's a very strong source of phosphate. Also, flags and stones on the side of the pond, coping stones, if you get bird droppings on there, the bird droppings contain high levels of phosphate. The rainwater washes the phosphate into the pond that way. So a strong source of phosphate in the koi pond is from runoff. Now, a second source is from the food that you're throwing into your koi. So koi food contains phosphate in the form of phosphorus, which is an important element in the koi's diet. So phosphorus is added to koi food. It's very, very tiny amounts, but it's a cheap kind of ingredient, a cheap way of getting bulk into the food, and as such, cheap koi food contains a lot more phosphates. So if you use a cheap food, you'll get phosphate in your water that way via the phosphorus. Also, using cheap food, there's less of the food is assimilated by your koi, and so more ends up in the water as waste. The koi produce more waste. This all contributes to phosphate, as does sediment, organic material in your pond, koi waste, dust, dirt, leaves, detritus, if your pipes have settlement in them, etc., all contribute to phosphate in your pond. So that's the second way. And the third way, and the way that I get all my phosphate in this pond, is through tap water. So unfortunately, tap water contains phosphate. It's added, it's historical, to be honest. Back in the day when in the UK the water pipes were predominantly lead, water companies started adding phosphate to prevent corrosion of the lead inside the pipework. nowadays very little lead pipework is still left. It's all been replaced by plastic or copper, but the water companies still throw phosphate in, probably unnecessarily, but they do it. So unfortunately most tap water in the UK contains phosphate. I've measured my supply here. My tap water is 2 milligrams per litre, and my pond is constantly 2 milligrams per litre. So I'm confident I don't have any contributing factors from runoff from koi food. My pond system is keeping the phosphate absolutely at a minimum, but the 2 milligrams is coming in from the tap water, and this is because I run a strong trickle in, trickle out. I don't know what the figure is at the moment. I need to check it, but certainly more than 100% a week trickles in of fresh water. As such, I am always going to have 2 milligrams per litre of phosphate. There's nothing I can do about that. I've added, just for by way of an experiment, I added Aquasource Resolve, which drops nitrates and phosphates. Those levels came down. 8 hours later, back to 2 milligrams per litre. So blanket weed treatments aren't going to get rid of the phosphate in this pond. And a lot of people will find that you'll have noticed, if you've kept koi for a while, sometimes you put a blanket weed treatment in, it works great. Other times it doesn't. And basically it's because although all blanket weed treatments will take out the phosphate and the nitrate when you put it in, which is the food for the algae and the weed, your system, it all depends how quickly your system regenerates that level of phosphate or nitrate. And in my case, because I trickle in such a strong trickle, I am fighting a losing battle. Whatever I put in to reduce the nitrate and phosphate, the phosphate, nitrate is 0 because of the shower. Whatever I put in to reduce the phosphate, it's just replenished straight away. Now, if you have a lower level in your pond, or if you don't have a trickle in, trickle out, you can tackle the phosphate. Plants, again, are a good means of phosphate removal. You can buy binders that will bind up the phosphate and take it out chemically. Work well, but they're very expensive. And certainly if you're trickling in strong amounts of phosphate, as I do, it's just not practical to remove them with chemicals. You'd have to be constantly dosing a small trickle of phosphate binder to ever keep on top of it. So unfortunately it's not one of those that's straightforward. I'm going to probably look at reducing my trickle in now, because the shower is taking out the nitrates, so I don't need such a dominant trickle to water down the nitrates. So I'm going to start to back off that trickle in and see if I can reduce the background phosphate level. The problem is I flush my filter out every night, so I lose water, so I need to replenish it. So just the act of replenishing the filter flush every day is going to add back in a lot of phosphate. Another way you can do it is with rainwater. Rainwater won't contain phosphate unless, of course, it's run across roofs, patios, gardens, etc., and picked up phosphate that way. You can use rainwater. Unfortunately, rainwater has other issues. It contains a lot of heavy metals and, again, a lot of contaminants depending on what it's ran across before you've collected it. Temperature fluctuations, pH fluctuations. For me, the downsides to that outweigh the positives, so I won't go down that route, but it may be an option for you if you've got a means of getting hold of a good supply of rainwater, and you can monitor it and control it for pH. You know it isn't picking up heavy metals and phosphates from runoff, etc. And if you don't flush your filters as often as I do, obviously you won't need to add back in as much. So that may be a means of doing it. But other than that, it really is a difficult one to address. Particularly, as I say, if you trickle in a lot of water that obviously contains phosphate. So yeah, have a look at your runoff situation. If you've got any opportunity for runoff, be it across grass, flags, patio, bird droppings, etc. Clean them up quickly. Have a look at the food you use. The better quality food you use, the less phosphate you'll have in your water. Also your filter system and your maintenance, you know, keep on top of that as best you can. That will reduce phosphate as well, but obviously it's kind of a double-edged sword really, because the more you clean out your filters and remove phosphate from detritus and decaying organic matter, the more you then have to replace the water with water containing phosphates. Well, yeah, hopefully that's helpful to some. If nothing else, it'll kind of get you thinking about where it comes from and what you could do maybe to minimise it. In terms of levels, you want to be down at 0.2, 0.3 phosphate, milligrams per litre of phosphate really. So as you can see, being up at 2 milligrams is huge. Somewhere down 0.2, 0.3 is a good level to be at. So as I say, hopefully that's useful. Any questions, anything I've missed, as always, give me a shout. Stick it down in the comments. I read them all, I reply to them all. Let me know in that if I've missed anything. If you like the video, if it's been useful, please do hit the like button. Makes a massive difference. And if you're not already, do subscribe to the channel and do check out some of the other videos I've got on there. Lots of good stuff on there now. And until the next time, take care, look after yourself.